Can you imagine kneeling in the grass at a park, your hands cuffed behind your back, your 8-year-old daughter screaming in terror, and a dozen rifles pointed at your family, all because one woman decided your picnic was a crime? That's where this story begins. A perfect Saturday afternoon turned into a nightmare, and the person responsible wasn't a stranger in the shadows, it was the HOA president from my neighborhood. It started like any ordinary day. I'm a history teacher, my wife Emily's a lawyer, and we'd taken our daughter Maya to Northwood Park for a picnic. We had the classic checkered blanket, a basket full of sandwiches, and a little speaker playing soft jazz. Maya was laughing as she tried to feed a squirrel a slice of apple, and for a moment, life was perfect. Then I saw her, the figure marching down the gravel path like she owned the place. Catherine Whitman. Crisp white dress, oversized sunglasses, that tight-lipped smirk that screamed entitlement. She stopped a few feet from us, hands on her hips, and said, clear as day, "Pack up your ghetto barbecue and go back to wherever you people crawled out from." Time froze. The music faded, the birds went quiet, even Maya stopped giggling. Emily and I stared at her in disbelief. I managed to stand and say, "Ma'am, we're just having a picnic." But Catherine doubled down. "You people are a blight on this community. I've seen it all before." And then she pulled out her phone. My blood went cold. She wasn't just being rude, she was weaponizing her power. Into the phone she spat out lies. "They're threatening me. They look like a gang. I think they have guns." We were a family of 3 with sandwiches, but in her mouth we became armed criminals. And I knew what that word gun meant. For people like me, it's a death sentence. Maya started crying. Emily's hands were shaking, and all I could do was pull them close and wait for the sirens. They came fast. Squad cars skidded onto the lawn, and then the black van appeared, SWAT. Armored men poured out rifles, raised bullhorn booming. "Hands in the air. On your knees." I dropped to my knees, the wet grass soaking into my shorts, my wrists twisted into cuffs. Emily tried to shield Maya, but our little girl was dragged down screaming. Around us, joggers and families watched some recording, none stepping in. And through it all, Catherine stood beside the police cars, calm, smiling, pointing at us like she'd caught the criminals of the century. Eventually, the lead officer realized what was really happening. They found no guns, only my phone clipped to my waistband. His face burned with shame when he looked at us, a teacher, a lawyer, a terrified child. But the damage was done. The rifles, the humiliation, the trauma, none of that could be undone. Catherine. She drove away in her white SUV, smirking like she'd won. That night, silence filled our house. Maya wouldn't speak, just curled up in bed staring at the wall. Emily asked if this was it, if the police would ever make it right. They wouldn't. Maybe they'll recommend charges, the sergeant had said, but it's hard to prove intent, meaning Catherine would walk away untouched. I sat on the couch watching the shaky video. I'd recorded the rifles aimed at my wife, the red laser dots dancing on her dress, and I felt a helplessness I've never known. For a moment, I wanted to give up. I thought maybe it was pointless, maybe I was overreacting. Maybe if we just kept our heads down, we'd be safe. But then, Maya asked Emily if she had been a bad girl at the park, if that was why the police came. That broke me. No child should ever think their joy is a crime. That was the moment helplessness hardened into resolve. If the system wouldn't hold Catherine accountable, I would. I replayed the video and froze the frame on her SUV, pulling away. The license plate was blurry, but legible enough. $20 on a public records site later, I had her full name, address, and a window into her world. She wasn't just the HOA president, she was the face of a children's charity, Bright Horizons Foundation. A pillar of the community, praised in society pages, hosting glittering galas for wealthy donors. The hypocrisy made me sick. I started digging. Property records, business filings, tax forms. Buried in the charity's disclosures, I found huge payments, 6 figures a year, to a company called Bennett Strategic Solutions. Except Bennett Strategic was nothing more than a P.O. box in a strip mall. The more I looked, the clearer it became. This was a shell company, and when I traced the name, I discovered the owner, her brother Evan, a disgraced accountant stripped of his license for embezzlement. Catherine wasn't just racist and cruel, she was funneling charity money to her crooked brother. But suspicion wasn't enough. I needed proof. That's when I found Susan Morales, a former bookkeeper for the foundation. Nervous at first, she finally confessed everything. Catherine used the charity credit card for personal expenses, spa trips coded as donor appreciation. And every month, Susan was forced to cut $20,000 checks to Bennett Strategic. When she questioned it, Catherine threatened her job. Eventually, she was fired. But Susan had kept insurance copies of invoices and emails. She handed me a flash drive in a mall food court, whispering, "Be careful. She doesn't just destroy enemies, she salts the earth." That drive was dynamite. Invoices with no details, just flat fees. Emails where Catherine referred to back pay for the family. Even draft contracts with comments from her and her brother spelling out the fraud in plain language. I knew then I could destroy her. But how quietly leaking it to the press felt too small. Catherine had humiliated my family in public, summoned a SWAT team for sport. If justice was going to mean anything, it had to be just as public, just as undeniable. That's when I saw it on the Foundation's website, an ad for the annual Starry Night Gala. Her coronation, her biggest night of the year. That would be the stage where I ripped her mask off. I contacted Sarah Jenkins, an investigative reporter with a reputation for taking down corrupt officials. I gave her everything: tax forms, invoices, emails, Susan's testimony. We struck a deal she would run the story live, timed to the exact minute Catherine stepped up to give her keynote speech. The night of the gala, I walked into the ballroom in a rented tux feeling like an imposter. Chandeliers, sparkled violins played, and every power broker in the city was there. And at the center of it all, Catherine glowing in silver, laughing, soaking in adoration. My hands clenched around a glass of champagne I didn't drink. I checked my watch. 8:29. Showtime. She took the stage to thunderous applause. She spoke of generosity of children in need of transparency, words so hollow they rattled in my ears. Then my phone buzzed. A single word: live. Across the room, phones lit up. Whispers spread like fire. Then, right on cue, the giant video screens behind her flickered. The slideshow of smiling kids vanished, replaced by the headline, "Bright Horizons" or "Family Slush Fund Channel 8 Investigation." Gasps erupted. On the screens appeared the damning documents, Evan's mugshot, Susan's disguised interview, and then the video from the park, Catherine's voice sneering, "Pack up your ghetto barbecue," followed by footage of SWAT rifles aimed at my family. The room turned on her. Donors who'd been dabbing their eyes minutes earlier were now glaring in disgust. Her husband quietly slipped out the back. Catherine sputtered into the mic, "Lies smear campaign. That man threatened me, but nobody bought it." Her mask cracked, her voice shrill. Desperate. That was my moment. I walked to the stage, calm, steady, the crowd parting as they recognized me from the video. I took the microphone, looked her dead in the eyes, and said, "Yes, Catherine. I did this. You tried to destroy my family. You thought you were untouchable. You were wrong." Then I turned to the audience. For 10 years, you cheered this woman on, gave her your money, never asked what was really happening. Tonight, you've seen the truth. The foundation was a fraud, and the children you thought you were helping were robbed so she could pay her brother. That ends now. The room erupted, not in applause, but in angry shouts. Security closed in. 2 uniformed officers walked on stage. Catherine shook her head, shrieking, "I built this. I gave you all something to believe in." But the officers took her arms, their voices firm. "Ma'am, you need to come with us." She fought, but it was useless. They led her off the stage, diamonds flashing under the lights, her face pale with defeat. And just like that, the woman who smirked as my daughter cried in the grass was gone, dragged from her own gala in handcuffs. Her power, her reputation, her armor, all stripped away in front of everyone she ever wanted to impress. That's where my story ends. Not in celebration, not in champagne toasts or hugs, but in the quiet certainty of justice delivered. The smirk was gone. The rifles were lowered, and, for the first time since that terrible day in the park, I could breathe. Never underestimate how far one ordinary person will go when their family is threatened and when the system fails to deliver justice.